Welcome to the Guiding Brands podcast with your host and chief guide, Karen Vick. This is a podcast for service-based small businesses who want to get a handle on their marketing so they can attract and gain new customers. Welcome to another episode of the Guiding Brands podcast, the podcast for small business owners and their marketing teams that helps you with learning all that you need to know about navigating today's marketing world. Today's guest is no stranger to podcasts and loves to share her knowledge about marketing, specifically as it relates to copywriting. She has written for some well-known brands and some not as well-known brands. She's also a master at pivoting and figuring out what works best for her and her clients. I'm going to let her give us the details of her journey to being a website and brand strategist. And so today I want to welcome Sarah Guilliot. We've been connected through other learnings ourselves. I think 3 years ago. Yeah, this year's 3 years ago that we met online. And I've learned a lot from her, just watching her journey. And we've been trying to get this podcast going for quite some time. And I'm just so happy that she's available now, that I am available, and we get to do this for everybody. So welcome again, Sarah. Could you please just tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've come to be on this journey, to being a website and brand strategist?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to school for art. And then when I left school, I was like, well, I think I want to get into computers. So that began my journey into design, graphic design. And then I live in the Seattle area, so we got all the big tech companies here. Nice. So I spent 20 years in corporate at places like, Microsoft, Amazon, T-Mobile, and GoDaddy was where I was the last 5 years. Working as a UX architect, which is a very fancy term for web designer. But I had this dream of starting my own business, especially at GoDaddy, because we served a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs, and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, ooh, I want in on that, and I want to help these people. But I let fear hold me back for a couple of years until my husband had a health scare. And I had that pivotal moment where I was like, hey, he's fine, by the way. But I was like, I can't let fear hold me back from this dream. So I, made a plan, and I left corporate and started my own business. And it's been quite the journey. I've done a lot of business experiments. It's funny how much entrepreneurship teaches you about yourself. It's like a growth journey. I've tried a lot of things over the years, and doing website design and copywriting, kind of bouncing back and forth between those two things. And I'm in the midst of a pivot right now, launching a new service called Coach Lift Off, where I am helping coaches get online with a really great website solution, and which includes the copywriting and just makes the marketing and getting their business started really, really easy. So I'm really, really excited about that. I feel like I've finally, it took 10 years, but I finally found
found your groove.
Yeah. Okay. I think I found the thing that is going to be a fit for my lifestyle and what I want.
Awesome. It sounds like it's a combination of all the things that you've been working with, right?
It
Website
is.
Design, copywriting, user experience, all of those things in one. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. I was just telling a friend the other day that it's kind of like, it's sort of like the hero's journey, where you pick up these skills and, this guides along the way. And then it comes to today, and I'm like, oh, I have all of these experiences I can pull together to make this thing that I want to create. And like, I know how to do it because of all the time that I spent. So yeah, it's just, it all comes together.
Right. Well, I've been on the receiving end of some of your copywriting. Your newsletters are just hilarious.
Oh, thank you.
I love them, down to earth and personal, but funny, and and you get your points across in very unique ways,
Hmm.
and that's what made me want to actually have this conversation with you about copywriting, because as a web designer or a graphic designer myself, we often I often run into challenges with clients and copy. There's not a great understanding, around exactly what copywriting is, and so that's the first thing I want to ask you. How do you define copywriting? You know, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I remember, um, I remember when I left college and I had a job interview, and I got a job
Mhm.
interview at a newspaper, and they're like, "What do you know about copywriting?" And I didn't know what that word meant, and I thought they meant copyright, like Circle C
Right,
law stuff. I was like, "I don't
right.
know, I don't know anything about law." And they're like, "Okay, yeah, thanks."
Yeah.
And who knew? Who knew I'd be a copywriter someday? But I've found that, like, in our space, in the small business space, the writers here, as you know, as opposed to like authors who are writing books, or people writing magazines, they split kind of into two camps, and it is the content writers and the copywriters. And so there can be some crossover. Someone can have skills from both sides, but if you're a small business owner and you want to hire somebody to help you write copy, if you're like, oh, I need some blogs and I need some social media posts, some tweets, Instagram stuff, whatever, you're going to want to talk to a content writer.
Hmm.
And if you need website copy or sales pages or emails, generally, um, copy where it needs to be more sales oriented and persuasive, then you would talk to a copywriter. And again, those things can cross. Like, a blog writer might have some sales copy in there,
Hmm.
but you would never want to, say, hire someone who's a dedicated blogger to write the homepage of your website, because
Website.
a sea of copy on your homepage it doesn't work. There's different rules there. So those are kind of the differences between those
I
two.
love that. I love the way in which you just broke that down, because I was expecting just the definition of copywriting, but you managed to actually, make we kid, but it's clarifying
Mm-hmm.
what we hear every day. Small business owners are being told, you need to create content. You need to create content now, and then you hear, oh, I need a copywriter. What is that? What's the difference? And you
Yeah.
just broke that down, and hopefully the person listening to this will say, okay, now I understand what that means, and who I should be looking for. And don't get me wrong, you can have a copywriter who is also a content creator.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, like Sarah said, them crossing over, and you can have an individual that's has the ability to do both, but you just need to be cognizant of why you want to use this. What's the purpose of the content or copy that's being written for you.
Mm-hmm.
So great,
Exactly.
thank you for that, thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet.
And then this leads me to the other thing. The next question is, what misunderstandings around that what other misunderstandings are there around copywriting, you know um as far as small business owners are concerned? I know some of them, when we talk to them about having content for their website, copy, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, I'm going to get my brochure that I did 10 years ago, and here, this is my copy, or their bio, or just their product descriptions, and there is a nuance. Those things are helpful to generate the content, but you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you went right where I was heading to, or I was thinking immediately, is like, one misunderstanding is not understanding where are these words going? Like, where are they going to live, and what makes sense for that place? So, where, like, for a tweet, it's very small. You know how people are receiving the tweets, and it's quick and it goes away.
Hmm.
There's different rules there than for your website. And same thing, like we were talking earlier about like a blog post versus a website. So making sure that the writing fits the space that it's in is really important because of a related thing, which is user behavior. So how someone is going to read a book, they're in a completely different space than how they're going to look at a website. So you read a book, maybe you're in bed at night trying to get tired for sleeping, and you're like, "Ooh, I want to read all of the words in here and get like into the story, and I've got all the time in the world and no distractions." Is very different than someone who's coming to your website to book you for services and they just want to get to the information quickly. You don't know where they're going to come in. At a book, they're starting at the beginning. On a website, they could go straight to your services page and never see your homepage. They could go to your homepage and never see your about page. And so understanding where they could land means that you have to treat things differently. Like you might want to repeat things on multiple pages. I find that sometimes people are afraid to do that. But if you consider that some people will just go to the homepage and then they'll immediately skip over to the about page because they want to learn about you and they want to learn how your story connects with them. But then they're on the about page and they might be wondering like, oh, I wonder how this process works. But they don't think to go to another page and then they get distracted and leave. So like, for example, you might have your next steps on your about page that are also on your services page and also on your homepage. So you got to make sure that you have that information there for like, no matter where they are, they have everything they need, but the things still make sense. So I would say those are some major components where people can get tripped up.
Okay. That makes so much sense. Because again, your website is not just a brochure, it's an informational, it's a tool to guide the user visiting the site. It's a sales tool. It's a marketing tool. It's that message that you're trying to send to them to attract them and get them to take action, whether to buy a thing or, book an appointment or, perform a task of some kind, whatever it is that you want them to do. So I like that. And, you are a brand strategist as well. And when we talk about brand strategy, oftentimes that's also another set of terms that often, the average person doesn't really grasp, brand and strategy for what, but you and I know that it's important for you to have a plan. You need to know, okay, yeah, you want to get someplace, but you got to be able to move from point A to point B. And just like you get in your car and you use your GPS, that strategy is going to help you get there. And one component of the strategy is your brand's voice, and that comes across through your copywriting. So, what are some of the things that we should be considering as it relates to, the brand voice and copywriting? Is there anything that you would think, and it goes back to your response to the previous question about telling that story throughout the website? Yeah.
Yeah. I agree that brand can be very confusing. It's even confusing for me. Like all these, like it could, people use it in lots of different ways. It could mean so many different things. So when people are thinking about their brand voice, what that means is that how people engage with you online, like when they read the words that are on your website, when they see you on video speaking, when they read your emails, the voice that comes across it's you, it's your personality. And I think a lot of business owners make the mistake of feeling like, okay, I'm a business, I need to sound very professional. And then they like turn on this like pro voice or this corporate voice that it's not them. It's very removed. They sound robotic. And then, so if you write in a really robotic way, and then someone sees you on video and you're like bubbly and fun and exciting, and it's just like there's this disconnect. You're like, yeah, like, wait, is that the same person that was writing to me a second ago? And if it's robotic too, that can be boring. They may not continue to engage in your content anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's tricky. That's one piece that my clients all have trouble with, is like figuring out what their true voice is,
Mm-hmm.
and how to sound naturally like themselves. So I think that one trick that I give people is that, like, write your copy and then read it out
Read it
loud.
out
Like,
loud.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
read it out loud to your mirror or to a friend, and just like in a natural way that you would speak, and notice how you change the words. Like, you might say gonna instead of going to. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
use contractions, like, you know, is, you're not going to say is not, you're going to say isn't, like,
Mm-hmm.
if you would like to reach out to me, you'd say, if you want to reach me, so like,
Right.
you can actually write like that, like, throw away your worries about English class in
And
school and
grammar.
grammar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that your teacher's going to get mad at you if you, like, say gonna, or don't, you start a sentence with because or and. Like, throw that all out. You want to sound like yourself. Read it out loud, make sure it sounds like you. And then it creates this, like, congruency everywhere that you are online. And
Mm-hmm.
so your audience will get to know you. They understand what you're like to talk to. It's not like a weird surprise if they get on a one-on-one call with you. They like you. They're like, the people that like you are going to be your best clients. They're going to be like, oh, she's so fun to listen to. She's going to be fun to talk to too. And it creates that trust and
Mm-hmm.
consistency. And really, that's what makes you look like a pro, is really, in the end, it's just being yourself. And that comes out with your brand voice, is really just your voice. And you got to throw away all the extras that you inadvertently are stuffing in there because you're trying to fit this mold of professional.
Well, and this is so true, very true. And let me ask you this: does the customer, do you have to think about your end user, your potential customer, when you're thinking about this? Because you may speak, you yourself, the individual, may speak a certain way. Like, forgive me if I were to speak in my native Jamaican patois. Forget it. You would. I would scare a lot of people away. You wouldn't understand anything I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, do we need to consider the customer when we're
Yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I just shared is a pretty reductive description of what you should or shouldn't do. That absolutely plays into it. And so
Mm-hmm.
you definitely want to be aware of what your ideal client would understand and feel
Mm-hmm.
comfortable hearing, and that they wouldn't be confused.
Right.
But I think there's a way to find that, but still sound like
Yes,
yourself.
like
It's
yourself.
just, it takes a little practice, takes a little digging, and like the reading aloud and knowing how you would speak to that person in the room with you, and practicing that out loud helps a ton with crafting that. But you're spot on. You definitely want to know that what your customers are going to understand.
And as you talk about, your own personality and not wanting to sound robotic too, the big elephant in the room popped into my head, which is AI.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, yeah, AI is easy. It will help me to create content, copy for my website, from all of my marketing material on and offline. And if you're not careful, you can end up sounding like that robot. Yes, these things are getting smarter, and they can pick up on your tone of voice depending on how often you use these tools. And I say AI is a tool. It's not something that
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to replace you, the human being. So, you need to be mindful of that. So I just wanted to add that in there. I don't know if you want to expand on that any,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Yeah, for sure. I know the second I say robot, my mind also goes to AI. Absolutely. I think it can be, I know when I started playing with I was like, how should I feel about this as a copywriter? Like, is it going to steal all my work?
Mm-hmm.
And I would put things into it and I'd get some responses out and I'm like, wow, these sound really good. And as I played with it more, I and like just looked at it a little bit more critically, I realized that the really good sounding thing that it was putting out really just sounded like everyone else
Yeah.
in a very polished way. I'm like, this
Mm.
sounds good, this sounds polished, but it sounds like the next person too. It lost me. And so sometimes when I'm using AI, as a tool to help me as well, the things that I'm doing when I go back into it are adding imperfections. I'm like, well, I would probably, say
Right.
this extra thing in here, or I wouldn't say such a perfectly crafted sentence, like
Exactly.
in reality, or I would
Yeah.
make a joke, like you said, my
Right.
emails make you laugh. Like I would make a joke,
Yes.
I'd make a dirty joke in there, like
Yeah.
those things to bring it back to life until I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds like me. It doesn't sound like this polished, perfect reflection of society
Right.
as a whole.
Yeah, and then you also stand the risk of, as to your point about sounding like everybody else. If you are writing content for your website, blogs, and so on, you won't have this unique voice that these tools, because it's these tools are actually going out and sourcing info from websites, from
Mm-hmm.
blogs, from whatever material you have out there. And if it doesn't sound like you, and you sound like everybody else, if everybody else is going to the same well called AI to get their content and just spitting it out there on their websites, then guess what? You won't be differentiated. You're just going to sound the same, and you're going to be worried about, why is it that I can't show up in search, and
Mm-hmm.
think that's another conversation altogether. That will take us down a rabbit trail, so I digress. So for so we talk about copywriting being used in, for websites, sales pages, emails, and so on. Do you have any recommendations as to where I'm going to stick to just websites, actually.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you think, or you believe that small business owners should focus on, particularly say they're a service-based business, a local service-based business that needs to show up in search, and
Mm-hmm.
needs to sell themselves. If they're, 50 million, like I'm in Florida, and it's summertime, and AC is a big deal. A few weeks ago, mine went out, and let me tell you, if I didn't know someone, I would be searching, and then I have to
Mm-hmm.
figure out which one I want to choose. So how does copywriting, come into play for websites when you want to differentiate yourself? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say that SEO and search engine optimization is not something that I'm skilled in. So when we start to look at like local search results or search engine optimization over time, I always turn to another expert for that.
Right.
Where I know that my skills will naturally help with search is that writing from the heart, sounding like yourself, not sounding like everybody else, differentiating yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and sharing like your best stuff. That's the stuff that when people find it in search, they're like, "Ooh, this is good," and they keep
Mm-hmm.
reading it, and then that will naturally help with your discoverability. And I know that there are things you can do to be found locally, but I don't know what those things are. I feel like
Okay.
probably know more about this than I do,
Well,
Karen.
what you just described, the things that you focus on are actually pretty, like right there, because Google has this acronym EEEAT. Don't I cannot remember the entire thing, but I know experience and authority are two of the words, or the things that
Mm,
Google looks for. And if you write in the way in which you just described, um, showing up authentically, talking like you would if you were having a conversation with that person who comes to your website, if you were just having, it's a conversation, and then it
hmm
will help, because Google is now trying to pull out the best option for their customers. It's you and I. We are customers of Google when we search,
hmm
and so yeah, no, you're spot on.
Oh,
I
thanks.
mean, there are other technical things that, yeah, we think about when it comes to SEO, but at the heart of it, the SEO expert that works on my team, that's one of the things that she talks about often. And also right now, especially with AI, there's these new acronyms floating around: AEO, answer engine optimization, and
Mm-hmm.
artificial intelligence optimization, AIO, those kinds of things. And these are the things that she's thinking about. How can I get my clients to actually, appear in those searches that people are doing using these tools, or just asking for questions, the AI for answers to questions,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, so great. I really like that, Okay. So, um, because we're going to try to make this episode into a multi-series episode, I'm trying my best to make these conversations bite-sized enough that people can walk away with something. I want to ask you, as it relates to what copywriting is, and some of these best practices that you just shared about, your brand and your voice, your brand's voice. Is there any tips that you can provide our guests as it relates to that? Are there anything, maybe there's a resource or just a little tip that you can give them, to help,
Yeah,
determine.
yeah, like an actionable
Yeah.
takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so many. It's hard to choose. I guess kind of calling back to something I said earlier, which is reading things out loud. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
your best secret weapon. It's like if you're sitting there and you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder if my copy voice is coming through on my website. Like just go and read it all aloud, read it to yourself, or you could record yourself
Mm-hmm.
and read your emails, read your posts, and like start to make note of the things that you realize that are coming across different than they would naturally from you,
Mm-hmm.
and like jot it down and try to remember it for the next time that you're writing copy. Maybe make some of those adjustments now, because sometimes it is just a matter of like this. A lot of times if I get, say, a sales page from someone and they're like, I need help with the copy, one of the first things I'll do is I'll just go through the whole page and make sure that I have contractions, and
Mm-hmm.
then it just doesn't say that is not, or it says isn't.
Right.
Like that's like an easy
Right.
first pass. Just go through your site, make sure there's contractions everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
y-
think
and
that
you
will
know,
help.
you saying that just made me think. There, culturally, it depends on your culture. It depends on where you are. So if I'm in Jamaica, and I'm doing business in Jamaica, Jamaicans speak using the British, English.
Mm.
So certain language, and that's a challenge. That was a challenge for me coming here, ever so long ago, and writing and communicating. So you, again, your audience, you need to know who you're talking to. And this tip about just hearing what you're actually putting out there actually is a fantastic idea and tip. Thanks for that, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So now I want to get into talking about how to take your copy and, turn it into, um, what the language we use in marketing is converting, high converting, or, you want your website to lead someone to take action. And when they take an action, then that's considered a conversion, whether they fill
Mm-hmm.
out a form, make a purchase, schedule an appointment, they've taken action, they've done something. So, you know, what kinds of research do you think small business owners should do to create copy that will influence their audience to take action on their websites and in their marketing period? Is there
Mm-hmm.
anything you can suggest?
Yeah, anything that you can think of that's going to help you understand your audience is key. Like, whatever, not everybody is comfortable doing calls with people to figure this out, but that can be really helpful if
Mm,
you're like, hey, I'm starting a business. I want to talk to business owner. Just put some posts out in a few groups online or whatever, and or ask your friends, I'm looking for people like this
mm-hmm,
that I could talk to. I'm not selling them anything. I just want to ask some questions about their struggles and solutions and ideas, and have calls with people. You'll quickly understand what they're struggling with, where their problems are, how they're feeling right now, what they're hoping to fix that with, or, what kind of transformation they're looking for. You'll get an idea of if people are even aware of the problem, or, like that problem aware, solution aware, like, do they know that the solution exists? Like if someone says, I need a website, they're going to go look for a website designer. They know that solution exists, but there might be some other issues that someone's having that they're looking for the answer to, but they don't know that that thing exists. And so like gather all that data. You can do it on those calls, those research calls, or you can, look at people's posts online, just type in like problem, topic, like whatever your topic is, or I need help with, or help, I'm stuck, and like see what comes up, and pay attention to that. So what you want to understand is what problems people are facing, how it's affecting them, how urgent of a problem it is. Like, is this something they need fixed immediately? Or is this sort of like this long-term thing? Maybe it's just more like they're looking for entertainment, something along those lines. Figure out what it is they want. What is the dream future state they want to be in? And that will guide you pretty far. Because when you know what they're struggling with, then you know that you can create a product to solve that. Right. And then while you're doing that, like actually capture their words, keep those in a document, paste them into a spreadsheet, their actual words, like their whole paragraph that they said, because someone might say something in a certain way that feels natural to them about what they're struggling with. And you would have said it in some other way. And if they see it in their words, there's going to be other people who are also, those are their inner words as well. And if you can pull out their exact words, then they're going to notice that. And that's, at the top of every page on your website, there's this section called the hero. And you want to make your headline be something called a hook. Like some people in the audience might be aware of what that is and some not. And the idea is that you hook them in right away so they're interested. And that's because you understand their problem. You know the words that they're thinking, and that gets them intrigued enough that they keep reading, and then you can guide them to your solution.
Excellent.
Yeah, jot those to keep their words, do some copy stalking as I learned years ago from Mariah Kaw.
That's a very good suggestion. And also you can also get help from your existing customers, right? If you're an established business, right? So how should, small business owners, existing owners use their existing clients to help them with determining, what kinds of copy to write?
Yeah. So you can look, like if you have clients that have written testimonials for you, that's a great place to look. Like when you first get a testimonial, it feels good, like, yay, and you tuck it away in your testimonials, but maybe you don't really pay attention to what they said in there. Start to read those and you'll notice some patterns and some trends emerging. And sometimes people's clients really love to be involved. Like they want to see you succeed. So you could even have those conversations I talked about earlier with your existing clients. I've definitely, like a couple of years back, I reached out to a client and said, I was coming up with a new offer and looking for someone to bounce some ideas off of. And would they be willing to get on a call? And they're like, sure, yeah, sounds fun. We love to brainstorm. And so I got on a call with them. And not only did I get tons of gold information that I could use to sell my offers to others, but then in the course of that call, also the side effect was they're like, actually, we need help with some of these other things. And that turned into even more business with them. So you can have this like extra benefit that comes up when you start talking to your existing customers.
There you go. I like that. I like that tip. You never know what your clients are going to tell you. They're going to tell you the truth, actually. If they really love you and they love what you do for them, they're going to tell you the truth. And then you just need to be willing to use it, So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all for this episode of the Guiding Brands podcast. I look forward to sharing with you again next week. So please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Thank you and bye for now.